Hello, welcome to the Critical Adjunct. This is our 5th episode. In it, I discuss the concept of leadership with an emphasis on its definition, its essence, and a characterization of what an effective leader should be, in my view. I also touch on the concept of courage that Brene Brown presents in her inaugural Dare to Lead podcast. And finally, I compare the leadership styles, or my opinion of the leadership styles, of the current and former president. First, a little bit about my leadership experience. I spent the better part of 4 decades in leadership roles with a growing pharmaceutical container manufacturing business founded in the mid-1960s by a 20-something entrepreneur. My role ultimately became that of growing the operations side of the business to achieve the founder's vision of becoming one of the most respected supplier of pharmaceutical containers to the international pharmaceutical market. And we did. When I joined the company in 1968, we were not making any product for pharmaceutical customers. 4 decades later, when I retired, we were making over 1 billion pharmaceutical containers in 6 factories and 500 million plastic caps in 2 factories of a company that we had acquired. So we had, for the most part, achieved our leader's vision. Moreover, I have studied leadership, formally and informally, for over 50 years. I earned a doctorate in organizational leadership and learning at the George Washington University in their executive leadership doctoral program. And I have taught graduate classes in leadership at 3 different universities, including the George Washington University, where I taught graduate classes in organizational leadership and organizational behavior. As I do with my students, I begin my definition of leadership with a focus on its root word, lead. Most dictionaries associate that word with the concept of guiding. And so a leader is one who guides. The verb to guide presumes both a future end or goal and the existence of followers. Therefore, leadership is the process of guiding followers towards some future goal, in my view. But what is its essence? For me, it is the leader's skill at motivating followers to achieve the envisioned future. It also requires followers to believe in both the leader and what she envisions. Some, like Brown, focus on qualities such as courage and self-awareness, and I completely agree with her in that they are necessary qualities for leaders. In addition to those qualities, however, I would add the other three qualities of the emotionally intelligent leader, which are self-control, social awareness, and relationship management. So an emotional intelligent leader is self-aware, self-disciplined, socially aware, and capable of managing relationships. Those concepts are presented by Goleman, Boyatzis, and McKee in their book, Primal Leadership. Going back to Brown's quality of self-awareness, in my view, it carries with it a condition of vulnerability. And Brown presents the concept of vulnerability also in her podcast. I would suggest that anyone who has read the leadership literature over the last 40 years would recognize that quality of self-awareness runs through that literature, including Greenleaf's servant leadership, Bass and Avolio's transformational leadership, George's authentic leadership, Avolio and Gardner's positive forms of leadership, including authentic leadership, and not to be forgotten, Brown's Dare to Lead, Sinek's 5 Skills of a Self-Aware Leader, and General Stanley McChrystal's Humble Leadership, and his book on the myths and reality of leadership. And so, for me, an effective leader is an emotionally intelligent, self-aware, and courageous guide who envisions a future and is skilled at motivating followers to adopt that envisioned future as their own. Putting aside any commitment to a political agenda, I will share here my opinion of the leadership styles of the current and former president. First, let me say that I am neither a Republican or a Democrat, and I am disgusted by most of those parties' presumed leaders. However, when thinking about the current and previous president, I would not characterize either of them as being effective leaders. One creates despicable names for others with whom he competes and or disagrees, and refuses to apologize to groups whom he has offended. The other criticizes people who have legitimate reasons for not being vaccinated without making any attempt to find out why they aren't getting vaccinated or don't want to get vaccinated. Moreover, he gives others with whom his party is associated a pass at having to be vaccinated. I don't think that either of those men exhibit any kind of emotional intelligence at all. Mr. Trump refuses to acknowledge misstatements or apologize to groups he has offended, and often characterizes his accomplishments with hyperbole when it is obvious to anyone that's paying attention that his claims are anything but wonderful as he seems to want those of us listening to believe. On the other hand, Mr. Biden characterizes the disaster in Afghanistan as a success when common sense and our eyes tell us that it was anything but a success. These are simply untruthful statements by both men. In each case, self-awareness is certainly absent. Mr. Trump's hyperbole, at the very least, is disingenuous and untruthful, and is evidence of his unwillingness to be vulnerable. At the same time, Mr. Biden's claims that his decisions on Afghanistan were supported by his advisors when his advisors make it perfectly clear that they did not support the decision is also disingenuous and untruthful in my view. Moreover, his habit of simply turning his back on the media and refusing to receive questions from them is evidence of his unwillingness to be vulnerable. After 50 years in politics, it is hard to pin him down on any one issue, as can be seen by his statements about getting Americans out of Afghanistan, something that he obviously did not do. In my view, anyone who does not honor his commitments is certainly not authentic or courageous. Trump supporters call him authentic and courageous because he, quote, tells it like it is, close quote. For me, that is neither authentic nor courageous. It is simply brashness. For one to be authentic and courageous, he or she has to be aware of his or her weaknesses and be willing to be accountable for them and therefore to be vulnerable. The American people expect more from their leaders and especially from their presidents. And that concludes the 5th episode. I hope you found it meaningful. If you did, please give us a thumbs up. If you didn't, we certainly will accept your thumbs down as we acknowledge our own weaknesses and are willing to take responsibility and to be vulnerable for them. Thanks, everyone. Appreciate it.